Hello everyone! You may or may not have been following my Half-Life 2 video series. In case you're unaware, the project acronym stands for Looking Around is Forbidden, and that's the whole point of it all. I've been playing through Half-Life 2, except I set my mod sensitivity to 0. This way, I cannot look around despite moving the mouse. The challenge with these settings varies. It's either trying to navigate the levels, opening doors, pressing buttons, or killing enemies. There luckily are some ways to rotate the player's view without using the mouse directly, and I've abused these a ton to make this run possible in the first place. While I planned on creating a dedicated commentary video after the run is finished, this video will serve the same purpose. I currently can't figure out how to get through the next chapter, Our Benefactors, so instead of cheating or skipping that area, I've decided to pause the run until a solution is found. This video will talk about the problems in getting past that chapter and how I've managed in the past, as it might get you thinking and come up with some creative ideas on your own. So I hope you're ready to take in a bit of information. Before we get into these technicalities though, here's a quick rundown of the current obstacle in the run. The chapter begins at the foot of the Citadel. You have to enter a pod and ride it across an entire map before being dropped out. After losing all your weapons and getting the supercharged gravity gun, you get to kill a few soldiers before arriving at a gate, which can only be opened by disabling the generator next to it. This is followed by a second gate, which works similarly. The two gates here are the deal breakers. Getting them open is, to my knowledge, not possible without moving the mouse. If I were to start off with the angles from the end of the previous chapter and walked all the way to the gate, I am basically facing the completely opposite direction. So it's a matter of finding some way to rotate the player almost 180 degrees. Note that whenever I talk of just an angle, it usually refers to the yaw, which basically is the same as looking left or right. This is the second coordinate of the angle in the angle overlay. You can enable it by typing cl_show_pos2 into the console. This angle is a value between -180 and 180, and it wraps around. In the case of the first gate, we need an angle between -40 and -110. Additionally, our pitch needs to be between the range of -22 and 17. The second gate requires a yaw between -62 and -107 and a similar range of pitch. There are two more gates on the next map, but they can either be skipped or fall within a similar range of angles. So how can we get within this angle range? Well, here's a list of all ways I know that rotate the player's view. But since nobody likes reading, let's exemplify and go through the list one by one. First off, we have the physical ways to rotate the player. These include rotating doors and trains. Basically, if you stand on a rotating door, your view will be rotated to follow the door. The same can be achieved if you squeeze into the corner and open the door. A train in the source engine is any model which follows a predetermined path. The pods in the first Citadel map are the only solid doors and trains in the early maps of the chapter. It is possible to stand on them, and it does in fact rotate you, but there's a slight issue. First of all, the rail is not solid, so we need to stand on these tiny physical objects to rotate us. While this does in theory allow for completely any angle, even if we make it to the end of this map, there is another slight issue. There is a pod ride map in between. Entering this vehicle changes your viewing angle. The angle at which we entered the vehicle does still influence the exiting angle, but it is clamped to a certain value range. Any angle between +180 and around -15 will drop us out at an angle of 90. Otherwise, we are dropped out with 156 on the yaw. Pitch always gets reset to 0. For reference, 90 is the angle that the pod faces when we drop out of it like normal. 156 has us facing to the left. And the gate, as you might remember, requires negative angle values. Another method of rotating, which was also commonly used in the previous chapters, is save deletion. You basically have to create two saves, kill yourself, but before respawning, delete the newer save. If you then press any key while dead, it'll try to respawn you using the latest save. But since you deleted that one, it simply loads you into the map of the first save, but instead of using that position, it starts you back at the beginning of the map. That's the same as if you were to use the map command in the console, and in most cases you can start with a bunch of weapons and ammo. Obviously, the angle you're gonna get from save deleting depends on the angle of the map's spawn point. I've created a program to give me the save deletion angle for every map and summarize this information into a table. Here are the angles for the 3 Citadel maps. Note that D3 Citadel 02 is the pod ride, so we can't save delete there without cheating. The other 2 angles we can get are both the same that we can get otherwise, 90, so it's not too helpful here. There are no teleporters in the maps, so this method won't work. While there are ENV physics explosion entities, they're neither said to distort the player nor do they target the player at all, so this method won't work. The last 2 conventional methods are firing the AR2's alt fire or shooting with the revolver. This angle change, as you can tell, is incredibly minimal, but it is indeed permanent. Even with the perfect random numbers and full ammo for both, the furthest we can turn on the yaw is 30 degrees. Since the 156 angle is closer to the gate, working off of that one will get us to an angle of -6, which is nowhere close. The remaining methods down here are interesting. They get caused by a bug which only happens in certain circumstances. The last methods I talked about were labeled with SnapEyeAngles, which is the function in the code that is used to change the viewing angle. Now, ViewPunch is usually a temporary effect. It snaps your view in a certain direction but instantly returns to the default again. However, if something called SnapEyeAngles during a ViewPunch, the animation timer will reset. This causes the ViewPunch effect to be permanently added to your view angle. The most convenient way to get ViewPunch here is from being meleeed by a Combine soldier. This always kicks your view by -7 on the yaw and -12 on the pitch. However, in order to get it to be permanent, we would need to fire the revolver at the same time, but we only have the gravity gun at that point, so what can we do? There's a bug in the map which lets us circumvent the weapon dissolver. Looking at the map in Hammer Editor, you can see that the trigger here does not extend all the way to the wall of the room. This is the trigger that's responsible for dropping our weapons, but also for disallowing us to pick them up again. So if we get close enough to this wall to be barely touching the trigger, we can drop our weapons but instantly pick them up again. The player moves really slowly in this area, but for some reason, crouching and uncrouching teleports you forward slightly. We use this to reach the wall in time. This is what happens if you're too fast. The cutscene starts, but without dissolving your weapons. You don't want this to happen, because all weapons are instantly stolen no matter what if you enter the trigger again. Now, due to the dissolver logic, we are not allowed to pick up the gravity gun, else the game either crashes or the cutscene never ends. The weapons may also not touch the dissolve trigger, otherwise they're stolen from your inventory, so we need a good position for this. Due to a bug with the exit gate, weapons can fly through it. That's why the 90 angle is not going to work. We would either drop the gravity gun outside of the dissolve trigger, or we lose all of our weapons anyway. However, our alternative 156 angle does in fact work. So we can take some of our weapons before letting them get taken and still allow us to continue. But it sadly isn't going to work out anyway. Doing the math, we can, again, assuming perfect timing, no extrapolation and perfect random number generation, rotate at most -177 degrees on the yaw. Starting with the 156 angle, this leaves us at -21, which is barely not enough. Even then, we would need one more revolver bullet to have a full magazine, forcing us to redo the previous chapter. Additionally, our pitch gets modified even further. Even with the best possible outcome, we would still end up with a -222 degree change in pitch. This leaves us looking straight up, which is definitely not feasible. The other ways to invoke ViewPunch are either not possible in combination with the SnapEyeAngle methods, or they don't change the yaw. To disable the gate, I would need to be able to take the energy orb out of the generator. This is only possible with a right click from the gravity gun, at least from this range. Left clicking requires a much closer range. There's no other ways known to destroy or take the orb. The only possibility I see to get past this gate is by skipping it entirely instead of trying to get a good angle for it. One way that would be able to do it is prop clipping. To put it simple, by shoving a prop against the wall for a bit, and save loading a lot, you can warp downwards. It even works at an angle if you get launched by explosives. Sadly, this requires 2 things: a small prop you can pick up by pressing E, and a ledge with your destination below you. Both of these are not given. No objects in the maps are small enough to pick up while they still collide with the player, and the map geometry is very horizontal in its layout. There are no spots where you can get over or behind the gate without finding new tricks. The level change trigger is completely isolated too. Most of the geometry above the map is purely decorative and can't be reached at all. Finally, I've considered safe warping, but since I'm using the latest engine version, this is not possible either. And that's all the info I can give and all the ideas I myself had to tackle this problem. Believe me, I've tried everything mentioned here. If you have other ideas, I'll be sure to test them out. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this does not mark the end of the series. Either way, it has been a lot of fun to play through the game like this, and I might do something similar at a later point as well. Have a good day.